authors of Banana Craze, La Fiebre del Banano, and this is a digital humanities project that researches the impact and the legacy of the history of banana plantations in Latin America through the lens of contemporary art. So the structure tonight is going to be that Juanita will begin by reviewing this history of banana plantations in Latin America and how this project came into being. And then I'll do a walkthrough our website, which is currently the structure and the basis for a digital humanities project. And yeah, then we can talk with you more, and we look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria, for the invite, and thank you, Bart, for having us here, and all the students. It's great to see your faces. I am a professor and I've been teaching on Zoom, and my students, they don't put their cameras on, so I really appreciate to see you. So as you probably know at this point, Blanca and I have been working on this project for a while. It started with a small exhibition that we curated together in New York City. And from then we decided to focus on a single fruit, and that was the banana. And so what I'm going to do here is to show you and tell you a little bit about the history, about the history of the banana, but most importantly, I want to answer the question of why bananas, right? That's like the main question, like what triggered this project. And so as Blanca said, we have structured this in 3 different sections. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that history. Then Blanca is going to show you our digital humanities project. And she's also going to explain why we thought it was a good idea to do and create a digital humanities project and not do a physical exhibition, which is also something we want to do, but this has like a different, it works in a different way, and we think it's really important to have that. And at the end, we're going to have some space for questions. So as I said, this is the main question, right? Why bananas? And I wanted to start by showing you a couple of images and stories. We both come from the art history world, so you're going to see that our references are obviously related to art history in general. But when you look around contemporary popular culture and contemporary art today, well, bananas have a prominent place. And you probably know this artwork by the Italian artist Maurizio Cattelan. It's an artwork entitled Comedian Piece, where he basically taped a banana on the wall of an art fair in Miami Art Basel in 2019. And he sold the artwork for around, I think it was an edition. So the first 2 were sold for $120,000. And the third one was sold for $150,000. And of course, this became a media scandal. People went crazy. They didn't understand how this could be an artwork, but at the same time, people were going to the art fair and making lines to get their picture taken with the taped banana on the wall, right? On the other hand, here's an example, an older example. You probably are familiar with Carmen Miranda, and if you're not, you're gonna be. She's a Brazilian singer and actress. She was actually born in Portugal, and then she moved to Brazil. And later in the 1930s and 40s, she became a big star in the US, first in Broadway, and then she became a movie star. And most importantly, she became this symbol of exoticism. It was sort of like auto-exoticism, which is, it's also interesting to see how from Latin America, these discourses were also being portrayed. And she became very popular because of her fruit hat. So I'm going to show you short part of this very popular video where you're gonna see her.
I wonder why does everybody look at me and then begin to talk about the Christmas tree. I hope that means that everyone is glad to see the lady in the tutti frutti hat. The gentlemen, they want to make me say, see, but I don't tell them that, I tell them yes, sirree. And maybe that is why they come for face to me, the lady in the tutti frutti hat. Some people say I dress too gay, but every day I feel so gay. And when I'm gay, I dress that way. Something wrong with that? No. Americans tell me that my hat is high because I will not take it off.
Okay, you can find this on YouTube, but this last part is called the banana dance. And I think they do an amazing work at creating this choreography. And more examples. So you're probably familiar, if you like rock music, with the Velvet Underground. It was Andy Warhol's rock band, and he created the cover design for their single. And it is, of course, this very, very popular banana, which is amazing because you could peel it. It's a sticker that you could remove, like starting here, and you could see like underneath, as if it was a real banana. And again, earlier during the 20th century, the slippery banana became a trope for comedians. But what's interesting is that this was actually something that used to happen, particularly in the harbors where bananas were unloaded, and the people who were working there or passing by, they would often fall due to the banana peels on the ground. So these whole stories that became tropes were actually based on real life issues, and this is how do you call this? This is like apart from the New York Times, where they make fun of that trope.
A cartoon?
A cartoon thing. But bananas were not a popular food in the US. By the end of the 19th century, they were actually considered a super exotic fruit. And we like to tell this story because we think it's amazing. These are two photographs from the 1876 Centennial Exhibition that took place in Philadelphia. This is the first World Fair that takes place in the US. And so just the fact that we have photographs of the banana plants says something about it. And just to give you an idea of what was being shown here, visitors who came to this fair, they could see Alexander Bell's typewriter demonstration. They could also see for the first time an arm, the arm with the torch from the Statue of Liberty before it was taken to New York, where it actually is right now. But people were super interested in the banana plant. So they would make lines to go and see the banana plant. People wanted to take the leaves, they wanted to touch it, to the point that the organizers of the fair had to put a guard to protect the banana plant because people were going crazy for it. At the same time, they were selling bananas, but bananas were being sold wrapped in tin foil, and people would take them to their homes and eat them with a knife and a fork, due particularly to the erotic connotation, the phallic form that the banana had. And well, we actually found this series of erotic postcards very recently. They circulated in France at the beginning of the 20th century. They are part of the collection of the Victoria and Albert Museum. And you can see how here this woman is using the fruit as an erotic device. So this was an issue for the people who were trying to market bananas in the northern hemisphere, because they had this very strong erotic connotation. So one of the strategies that they began to use was using, again, photography to counterbalance that. Reading and pictures like this one, where you see, very proper white woman eating bananas, to give the sense to the people that it was okay to eat a banana, that if a white woman from the elite was able to eat the banana without any issues, it was okay. But this became, it was an issue, and the banana companies really find a way to counterbalance the discourse and to challenge this. But the real question is, how did bananas become such a popular fruit? And the story is kind of dark, to say the least, and we're going to be very brief and concise, but we really want to tell this story. So it all begins with this man. His name is Minor Cooper Keith. He was a New Yorker. He was a businessman, and he decided to move to Costa Rica in 1871 to help his uncle, Henry Meigs, to build the Costa Rican Railroad, which intended to connect the capital city, San Jose, which you see here, with the port city of Puerto Limon, which was, of course, on the shore. This was a crazy task, because this had to be done manually. There was no infrastructure to help the people build the railroad. They had to work in a very dense jungle and build the railroad by hand, literally. It is estimated that around 5,000 people died during the construction of the railroad in Costa Rica, including Meigs, because he had to be, well, close to where this was being built. Anyways, in order to feed the workers that were building the railroad, they started to plant bananas because they were cheap, they were easy to cultivate, they were very nutrient. And by 1890, Minor Cooper Keith realized this, and he decided to plant bananas, not only to feed the workers, but to export them massively. So he thought, I could plant the bananas, I can use the railroad to transport them to Puerto Limon and then ship them to the US. The problem was that he could not do this alone, because although bananas are protected by the peel, they have to be kept in very, very low temperatures keep them from ripening before getting to the final consumer. So that meant that he needed ships with these conditions to be able to ship the bananas to the northern hemisphere, to the US particularly. By the time that he began with this idea, other fruit companies were also beginning to export fruits from Latin America to the US. And that is how Keith joined forces with Andrew Preston, who you are seeing here. He was the owner of the Boston Fruit Company, and they founded together the now infamous Banana Fruit Company. And you're seeing here one of the first logos of the company, which is, of course, really incredible for our contemporary eyes to see a logo that has this big shotgun, right? And that it somehow foretells the story of what the United Fruit Company was going to be in Latin America. The history of violence that surrounds this company is really incredible. So the company grew extremely fast, and they expanded to Jamaica, Panama, Honduras, Guatemala, Colombia, Cuba, Ecuador, and the Dominican Republic. And many of these countries welcomed the United Fruit with their arms open because the company promised to bring progress in terms of industrialism, right? So railroads, radio stations, schools, like all sorts of things that suppose these countries needed. And I'm showing you here two maps, one from the 1920s, where we can see how the regional operations of the United Fruit Company were growing. And this other one where we can see the routes that the steamships were, like, yes, the routes that the steamships were following from South America and Central America, the Caribbean, to the US. And it's really insane to see this. They were called the Great White Fleet because the ships were so big and wide that they were recognizable anywhere. You can Google it and you will find pictures very easily. So although at first it was thought that the plantations would encourage local progress and bring all these new things to Latin America, and the human cost was really very high. And of course, we know today that this did not lead to the establishment of democratic governments nor to modernization in any way. So the companies were really taking advantage of the workers. There were a lot of labor abuses. Many diseases started to spread, and we also began to see the death of hundreds of local workers. You're probably, and if you're not, familiar with the episode from the Bananas Massacre in 1928, which took place here in Colombia, close to on the Caribbean shore. This was a huge massacre where the Colombian government assassinated the workers from the banana plantations because they thought they were they were getting together to spread communism, basically. So it was the United Fruit Company spread the word about this huge strike, and the Colombian government reacted in that way, and they killed hundreds. We don't even know yet how many people were killed during this huge massacre. Another horrible story is that of the coup from 1954, which took place in Guatemala. And we know today that it was backed by the CIA in relation to the United Fruit Company. So what we're trying to say here is that this company was really involved in the politics of what was happening in Latin America. So while all of this was happening here in the South, in the US, the United Fruit Company was promoting the consumption of bananas using different strategies. And they were targeting women in particular, since they were the ones doing the groceries and cooking. So they began to create cookbooks, TV commercials, toys for the kids, etc., etc. So advertisement of all sorts. And this was a very successful strategy. People began to eat bananas massively. And they had a huge advantage because bananas have an attractive color by themselves. They have this protective peel that is natural. They are nutritious, and of course, they were very cheap. And here I want to show you some hard facts. So to give you a sense of how this began to grow. So by 1900, in the US, there 50 million banana bunches were consumed per year. By 1910, this number had doubled, more than doubled. This is exponential growth for any type of product. This is the banana consumption in the global north today. So a person in Europe eats around 110 bananas per year. In the US, 130. In Canada, a person eats around 150 bananas a year. Here we have some maps related to how where bananas are produced and where bananas are consumed. So this is a map where you see that the production of bananas is centered in the global south, because that's the ideal weather for banana plantations. But when you look at the map that shows consumption, it definitely changes, and we start to see a lot of these green dots in the north. More importantly for us and for the project that Blanca and I developed is that you can see that when we think about production, Southeast Asia has probably the highest production rate of bananas, but they produce for local consumption, as you can see here, right? Whereas in Latin America, it's very different. We produce to export, basically. So there is local consumption, yes, but Latin America is the largest exporter of bananas in the world. And as you can see in this chart, Ecuador is the largest exporter of all the countries with 33% of the export production in the world, followed by the Philippines, and then it's mostly Latin American countries. So this is really the place where bananas are grown for the northern hemisphere. And there is, of course, a real ecological challenge with the banana plantations, and it has to do with the monoculture. That means that even if we have more than 1,000 banana varieties in the world, we only plant one massively. This is a perfect storm for diseases, and this is actually what happened at the beginning of the 20th century. So you probably have tasted banana candy and this artificial flavor, which tastes funny to us today, and this is the main reason. So it turns that flavor was based on a different banana variety from the one that we consume today. It was based on this type of banana called the Gros Michael, but this type of banana suffered from a huge disease called the Panama disease, which destroyed plantations around the global south, and so it had to be, they couldn't cure the plantations from the disease. Here you see how a banana looks like when it has the Panama disease. So basically what the companies had to do was replace the variety with a different one, and that is the one we consume today, which is called the Cavendish variety. So you're not going to see different types of bananas if you go to your local supermarket in the US. And this is basically the main reason for that. And I just want to end this part of the presentation with a short video that we think it's great in making this story really accessible for all of you. So I'm just gonna play it.
things you can do with fungi.
Okay, so I'm going to pass the word to Blanca.
Thank you so much, Juanita. Do you know if I'm co-host already? Let's see if I can share screen. Yeah, I think so. Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfectly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Juanita. That was amazing. So after we did our first exhibition together in New York City at this place at the Essex Street Market in 2017, that's called Cuchifritos Gallery, which is artist-run gallery space that's located within the old location of the Essex Market. We worked on the fruit trade in the global south. So it was a very small space, but we had enough room to have 3 works from Emiratos Árabes, like Arab states, Colombia, and Cuba, that reflected on the impact of the fruit trade in the global south. And that brought us to focusing on the banana. And Juanita and I wanted this to be an exhibition. We did our PhDs together in New York City, but then she moved back to Bogota, I moved back to Madrid. We kept talking over Skype before it was all about Zoom. And we couldn't find a place to make our exhibition happen because there were so many works we wanted to include, and it was going to be very costly because of shipping costs and insurance. And then just before the pandemic happened, so we are pioneers of virtual projects, we realized that all of this research needed like some sort of support that looked more like a database rather than an exhibition, and that was the place to begin with. So for a little over 2 years, we have been researching the legacy and the impact of banana plantations in Latin America and the Caribbean through the lens of contemporary art. We have 100 works in our project right now that I will show you momentarily, but that's like the backstory to how we started focusing on bananas in Latin America. And at first it was like, I don't know, like an epitome or a perfect example of the many problems that are related to the fruit trade in the global south. But now that we have worked so much on this, we realize that almost every story about the 20th century history of Latin America can be told through bananas. So as hopefully you will see in this exhibition, bananas touch every single project, project not problem, or issue related to recent Latin American history. They have to do with the history of violences, coup d'etats, demonstration, workers' rights, questions of cultural identity, national identity, migration identity. They have to do, of course, with the environment and ecosystems. So hopefully what we will present to you today is not just an exhibition. It's not just about the visual arts, but it's more about how we can reflect about economics, history, and politics through a different epistemology, which is that of visual culture and the visual arts. So Banana Craze, or La Fiebre del Banano, and we really like to emphasize that the project is bilingual and therefore the title is bilingual, is a digital humanities project that is structured right now through or as a website that has 3 different sections. The first section is an online exhibition, like a virtual exhibition that I will show you momentarily. Then we also have an archive that allows different ways and strategies to research the works. And the third section of this digital humanities project is this project as an ongoing research project. So this hasn't stopped. We are still researching bananas and contemporary Latin American art. We hope to upload a new bunch of artworks in the next few months. We would like to expand our research to the French-speaking and English-speaking Caribbean, also include further the diaspora in Canada, the US, and in Europe, and perhaps even at some point include the Canary Islands in Spain, which is a place in Europe where most pesticides are used today, because of bananas. And as Juanita mentioned before, hopefully someday this will finally be a physical exhibition with a selection of the works that maybe can travel to a few different locations, and eventually also a printed publication. But for now, this is all online. And as any exhibition, this begins as an exhibition. As any exhibition, you are welcomed by main text that frames the concept and the theory behind the exhibition. And then you have three different galleries or like rooms. These are violences, ecosystems, and identities. We thought that these were like the three main problems or categories where we could fit the works. And the beauty of this project being online is that a work can fit into more than one category. So while in a physical space or gallery, we couldn't hang a work in two walls, here we can have a work dialogue with others in different settings and contexts. So I will show you each of the sections momentarily, but I want you to see that these are all of the artists in the project. As I just mentioned, we have right now 100 artworks, if I'm not mistaken. And each of these belongs to either one or more categories of the exhibition, can also be researched through the different possibilities that the archive feature allows. And then each of the works in the project includes, of course, an image of the work, a complete caption of the work, and an analysis or description of the work. In this case, this is Adal Maldonado, a New Yorican artist who makes playful photographs on New Yorican identity. But we think it's important to show how each of the works can be researched as a unity in a way, but also seen in dialogue with other works. So the first exhibition section or theme, or maybe gallery room, if this was a physical exhibition, is violences. In this section, as Juanita just mentioned, we have works that deal with the intervention of the United Fruit Company and other multinationals operating in the Caribbean and Central America in local politics and local governments of Latin American nations. There's an awful history of abuse of labor rights. The working conditions of workers at the banana plantations were really extreme. The temperatures were very high. They had no equipment and no protection. They spent many hours there. And then, of course, there's the breeding of the pesticides to prevent the Panama disease. But this section also includes contemporary forms of colonialism that are still happening today, because today bananas are still the #1 fruit consumed in the world, as Juanita showed, and they are one of the cheapest, if not the cheapest, fruit available in any country, and that's just not sustainable. Like what a farmer gets paid for growing bananas is just ridiculous. So that's also part of this exhibition. There's land expropriation, how in the early decades of the 20th century, many banana companies actually bought land from the government that expropriated it in turn from the farmers who were cultivating it. And of course, many works, as Juanita mentioned in this section, have to do with the Masacre de las Bananeras in Colombia, with the coup in Guatemala. And just an example of one of the many works featured in this section is this work by Mexican artist Minerva Cuevas. That's like a diorama, like these vitrines that you might find in natural history museums, that includes both painting and sculptural elements and reproduces banana bunch. And the sticker of Del Monte, one of the main companies that trades with bananas, is here modified to read Del Monte with 2 T's, which is a reference to the dictator in Guatemala in, I think it's 82, 83, Jose Efraín Ríos Montt, who was accused, and he eventually passed away, but he was accused of being the perpetrator of the terrible genocide against the Itil Maya people in Guatemala. So Minerva Cuevas here is interested. This is part of a larger project, a larger piece. There's also a mural in Jumex in Mexico of a project that relates agricultural politics and international politics, and and the complicity between local governments and international multinationals operating in the area. Then our second section or gallery room in the exhibition is titled Ecosystems. The works in this section deal with the awful consequences of the monoculture. The monoculture consumes or wastes liters and liters of water. It's also responsible for severe deforestation, but it also affects obviously the economy, because farmers depend on just one produce, which is bananas, instead of having a diversified and varied sustainable way of living, which in turn also, of course, affects the local diet and affects the local landscape, and therefore this has implications on local forms of living and local forms of culture. Works in the ecosystems section also deal with the terrible health effects of pesticides. There are severe breeding problems in many countries in Central America and the Caribbean because of the use of pesticides in banana plantations, but there's also cases of infertility. There's a very famous case in Nicaragua of workers who suffer of infertility and have suffered of infertility for decades. And they tried suing, I think it was Driscoll in Nicaragua who was operating in the 90s when this happened, and they've been on trial for years, and I think it hasn't been resolved yet. What else do we have in this section? We also have, and then on a positive note to this, we have a few works that also propose alternatives to the massive consumption of bananas, such as shopping responsibly for fair trade companies, or repurposing banana peels and recycling it, for example, to make paper, or also campaigning for the consumption of bananas and other fruits that are not pristine, that do not look perfectly well, but that are should and can be eaten and should not be discarded. So I brought an example to illustrate this section. This is Gabriela Bettini. She's Argentinian and Spanish, and she works from an ecofeminist perspective. Her works are usually paintings on canvas, and the canvas is often structured on different sections. And this on one way alludes to like the heteropatriarchal view over nature and science that puts everything into its box and is hyper-structured. But she researches pioneer women in the history of botanics and botanical expeditions. So, for example, some of her works allude to the paintings of Marianne North, who was like a botanist from the UK from the 19th century, who campaigned very early for the importance of ecosystems, for like flowers and plants and fruits and insects and butterflies all being together and not being torn into different parts for the sake of scientific research at museums and natural history museums especially. And she's also very interested in the work of sorry, what's her name? I'm blanking. Vandana Shiva, and who's an Indian scholar, an activist whose work, The Monocultures of the Mind, argues that the monoculture is a contemporary form of colonialism because it forces people into a way of life that's dependent on the capital, right? And so Gabriela Bettini is influenced by all of these sources, and then she also pays homage to these key figures, key women in the history of scientific research and natural expeditions, to reflect on the representation of nature, from an ecological perspective. And then finally, the third section of the exhibition, like the third gallery room, is identities. Here, the works dwell with the cliche, the stereotype of banana republics. As Juanita explained, this term was coined in relation to the many coups in Central America, and still today, it refers to a poor government, a corrupt government, a country that's easily influenced and unstable, and how this still lingers in stereotypes about Latin American identity that are also, of course, sexist and racist, and that many times draw like a simile or draw comparisons between the shape of the banana and its phallic form and its like soft texture, and the Latin American body as a body that is portrayed as being hypersexual and lazy, and also like a soft body. Bananas are also have become, thanks to the campaigns of the United, have become a very cartoony fruit, like a very iconic image. They're bright yellow, and they've become like childish in a way. And this also lingers on representations of Latin American culture as playful and jolly and lazy, and it also appears in many works from migrant artists from Latin America and the Caribbean who reside in the US. And in these works, the bananas are both like vindicated and rejected as a stereotype that is like a load, like a heavy load on top of their identity, but also as a proud and shared symbol of a migration identity. So this is Victoria Cabezas here from Costa Rica, but today I brought this work by the then duo of Cuco Fusco and now Bustamante, based in New York, I think from Puerto Rico and Cuba, if I'm not mistaken. And this is a very long performance, almost theatrical, that's composed of several sketches. And the work explored the relationship between the United States and Latin America through the tourism industry, and how tourism industry is also articulated on the consumption of sex and the consumption of food. So this performance touched on those problems and issues, and at the very center of the stage there was always a table with a bowl of fruit, and very prominently featured a bunch of bananas, and the sketches had to do with sexual harassment, workers' exploitation, and this uneven relationship between the consumers of bananas and the producers of bananas, and how, as in any problem, I think today concerning climate change, and the root behind everything is social inequality, particularly between the North and the South. So going back to our project, this has been like a short preview of the 3 sections of the exhibition, which is the first and main part of our digital humanities project as of today. But the website, as I was saying before, also allows the viewer or the visitor to research this project as an archive. So of course, our work can be researched according to each of the 3 different categories or like themes, but it also allows the possibility of researching the works and the artists alphabetically through this list by last name. But the works may also be researched chronologically. This is, we think, interesting because it allows to reflect on what problems associated to bananas were more common, depending on the different moment through history. Our project starts in 1960 we thought that was a good moment, beginning of the Cold War, and it starts with, it starts with this iconic photograph by Raúl Corrales of Cuban guerrilleros celebrating the Cuban Revolution, and in particularly here they are leaving the last plantation of the United Fruit Company in Cuba, just after the United Fruit Company has been expropriated of its last plantation on the island. So we thought it was perfect to begin with our project with a work that deals with the expropriation of property from the United Fruit Company. In the case of Cuba, the United Fruit Company at this point was mostly focusing on sugar plantations, not on bananas, but we thought it suited the story very well in any case, and it speaks to what would happen next, the history of leftist movements in Latin America, and this was also read as a sign of solidarity with Guatemala with the coup just 2 years before. So the project starts there, but each work is placed through the timeline, and one, as I was saying, can see what problems or topics were hotter at each different year and decade, and it runs through 2021. I think the last work in the project was just executed this summer at an artist residency in Costa Rica. So that is just to show you that this is constantly growing and that we are very actively looking and seeking for more works. And I take this opportunity to please welcome you to email us if you have any suggestions or ideas, or if you're an artist or a cultural practitioner yourself and you have a work that you would like to be featured here. We're always looking for new works for the project. And then the third category of this like archive section of the project is researching the works geographically. So they can be searched thematically, alphabetically, chronologically, and then finally geographically. I'm not sure if this is working today. I tried before and the map feature was not working, but it usually does. So no, it's not, sorry. But this also allows one to see how many works or what different type of works each nation has produced, I guess, or like see what different concerns worried the artists from these different countries, and also draw research and conclusions from that to see how, I don't know, maybe works that deal with bananas in Colombia are often related to the Masacre de las Bananeras, but perhaps in the Caribbean they have more to do with questions of cultural identity. And then finally, the third section, or the third main row of this project is this project as an ongoing research project. So we have a virtual exhibition, an online archive, but then this is a very live research project that is constantly growing. And as such, we are holding virtual events like the one that brings us here together today throughout the year. We presented the project at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia, and we counted with the presence of the Costa Rican artist Victoria Cabezas. You may watch the video here. Then we still need to upload the video, but a couple of weeks ago we presented the project at the Universidad de los Andes, and we counted with Colombian artists Elgil Calderón and Alberto Baraya. Very soon we will update the video of today's event, and we are going to continue organizing events until during probably the next year. We have scheduled a couple of film screenings. There are a series of very interesting documentaries about the history of bananas in Latin America and Central America and the Caribbean. So we're gonna hold screenings of documentary films. We are also going to hold a workshop with Brazilian artist Daniela Con, who's gonna teach us how to recycle banana peels to make jam, vinegar, and paper. And then we hope to hold more conversations with other artists from the project, as well as with Shanna Klein, which you read her text today. So as part of the research component of this project, we have public events, but we also have publications. Sorry, this should be in English. And the publications are like of two different types. We have a blog, and then we have academic articles. In the blog section, right now we have, I think it's 4 or 5 articles that were written by a series of students from the Universidad de los Andes who worked with us last year in the development of this project, and I'll talk about them later. But these articles are by them, by the students from Los Andes. And then this blog section will continue to grow, but we also have a section for more academic articles that Juanita and I are publishing elsewhere. So our first publication was on MoMA's digital magazine, which is called Post. And it was an article on Ecuadorian artist Maria Jose Argencio and Costa Rican artist Oscar Figueroa Chavez. And now we're working on a chapter for a book on food justice and female cultural practitioners. So that will be out hopefully in spring 2022. And then finally, as any research project, we also have a section dedicated to references with a very long bibliography that also continues to grow. And that's it. So that's the third and final section of our digital humanities project as of today, which is the ongoing research project. And as we said before, we hope that this continues into an exhibition and maybe one day a book. And here very briefly, I wanted to acknowledge everyone in our team. So this project is by Juanita and I. We have been working on this for over 2 years at night during the weekends, but we received a generous grant from Universidad de los Andes that allowed us to work on the website with the help of web designer Tokika, and then also with the help of a number of students from Universidad de los Andes who helped us immensely getting all of the image rights and permissions from each of the 100 works in this project. And then we also received the support of Banana Link, which is a UK-based nonprofit organization that promotes fair trade of bananas throughout the world. They are amazing, and I invite you to visit their website to learn about how can you consume bananas more responsibly. And they supported the translation of the website into English. So our thanks go to the students, Banana Link and Universidad de los Andes, as well as to the web designers. And finally, I'd like to invite you all to follow us on Instagram, Banana Craze 2021. We post about 3 times a week about the different sections of the project, the artworks, the archive, and like the facts about the history and present of banana plantations in Latin America. And yeah, I think I'm not leaving anything out. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Blanca and Juanita. This has been fascinating. And I'm going to leave the floor open to the students who, a lot of them here have been studying the histories of violence in Latin America through precisely this new epistemology, as you well said, or this possible epistemology, which is the history of plundering of land and bodies, right? So the history of food as well. And so I'm sure they have many questions. So I'll step back and let them ask. Sarah, do you think we should do you want to field them, or do you think? I think it's a small enough group that we can probably just let people jump in, unless you've already received a bunch of questions directly.
I have a couple of questions that I received, but otherwise, yeah, we can just do some hand raising, and that can totally work too.
Yeah, maybe even those people that send you the questions can just go straight in and ask them.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
I'm gonna have to reconnect my computers.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Does so Olivia, do you want to ask your question, or we have one from Olivia and we have a couple more. You want to get us started?
Sure, I can get started. Thank you so much for speaking and sharing all that. That was great. I guess for context for my question, I think last week we talked a lot about avocados and green gold. And so we talked a lot about the organized crime in Mexico with these avocados. So I was just thinking a lot about how maybe there are similarities between companies like the United Fruit Company and their ability to manipulate the politics of Latin America, and now how that there are like so many organized crime groups that function in these countries maybe similarly. And I was interested if you think that this is also something that has come about maybe because of these like previous groups. And I guess my question more broadly is like, who is kind of like at fault for teaching the world that like money and power only comes with like resource extraction, violence, and if there are multiple perpetrators and victims within this story. So a very big question, but anything would be lovely. So thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. I'm not sure if I'm able to answer your question. Blanca and I are not familiar with the history of avocado plantations, but there's certainly a history, right, to what's happening today. And I think it says a lot about how our governments here work in general, and how history is not really part of their interests. So we see how these problems come up, again and again. Certainly, I would say that banana plantations are more regulated today. And I mean, the problems are still there. And it's really sad to see the contrast between the workers and the I'm just thinking about, we had a couple of weeks ago, we had a conversation with an artist who was telling us the story of how he went to the very small town where the Bananas Massacre took place, and how still today they have no water. They have, the railway passes right by the small town. And the people who used to work at the plantations, they basically had this beautiful camp with a golf course, with swimming pools, and all the luxuries you can think of, while still this promise of progress was not even happening where the workers live, and it's still like that today. But yeah, I don't know if we can find a strategy to let these people know what's going on, right? And I think they're very conscious about it, honestly. And that's
I think the dark side of all of this is that we are all responsible to some extent, right? Like, we can blame corporations, of course, but then it's all of us eating bananas and avocado, right? And it's very hard to draw far from those habits. And I think, even though we don't know much about the history of avocados, there's also this aspect that is shared and common to sugar, coffee, avocados, and bananas. Are all very appealing, right? Like, they've become such like basic staples of like comfort and home nurturing. Like, it's never, I don't know, with a lame carrot, right? Like, it's always something very appealing that is being commercialized as such. So I think it would be really interesting to research also like the visual identity of the campaigns that have marketed avocados are something so appealing and so comfortable, and also so nutritious, just like bananas, and also easy to carry, just like bananas. So there are many points of contact, now that I think about it, in how they have been marketed, so that we all feel like we need avocados all the time, like we need bananas all the time. They're also very energetic, right? Like bananas, like it's this idea of like a superfood. So yeah, there are many points in common, and it's interesting to see how they are also portrayed as something cartoony and childish, and when there's this awful history behind. But thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you, Olivia. Maybe you want to tell Olivia, now that Blanca's making reference to the way that avocados are being marketed. I'm not sure if you want to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl marketing. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of it or not, Juanita and Blanca, but we spoke a lot about it last class.
Colombia's president was very proud because they sold, I don't know how many tons of avocados for the Super Bowl. So yes.
Yeah, like with the US, basically, like it became a Super Bowl fruit, and so the rise of avocado sales during Super Bowl were American football rises exponentially until Super Bowl. So there's a huge the marketing there is very centered on one thing. It seems like.
Thank you so much, Olivia.
I have a question kind of related to all of this about the visual marketing and just essentially like the response to visual images and visual media. So you guys told us about how the corporations were using images to change the narrative around bananas to help improve the marketing and help improve the sales. And then the work you're doing with the exhibition is visual imagery and visual images and visual media that I feel like is almost like and it's like revealing the history. And so I guess my question is like, what kind of responses do you get from people or from viewers, or what kind of a difference in effects do you see happening from like your work with the visual images compared to like the history of using images to manipulate the market? Like when people see the exhibitions, do they have responses like, oh, I'm going to stop eating bananas, or do they become more interested? I guess I'm just interested in like the difference of response between using images to kind of like manipulate like capitalism and then also kind of reveal histories.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, yeah, I think what's helpful about the exhibition is that it puts together works that would otherwise be isolated, seen in different contexts, maybe small exhibitions at a gallery or maybe a museum show in the US. But I think it's powerful to see all of them together because that's how I guess they act as a campaign. Like the reverse of what the United was doing in a way, right? That's how you see there's a long history of violence, but also a long history of artists and cultural practitioners denouncing this. So I think it also works by accumulation in a way. And we think that's part of what's interesting about this project. At some point, we thought we could write about each of the works, but then we realized there was more strength in featuring as many works as possible just to make that point. And in terms of the people's reaction so far, I've had a few friends and colleagues tell me that now they think twice before they buy a banana, and it's happened to me too. Like the other day I was gonna get a smoothie and I saw the Del Monte sticker and I was like, man, I can't, I have to choose something different or I'll go home and I'll drink water. Yeah, I've become more aware, and we were still looking for funds to do all of this public programming. I'm not sure in other areas of the humanities, but it's very common in the visual arts for people to work for free. And we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to continue that. And we wanted to have invited speakers and artists in our public programming, but we didn't have any money. Like Juanita and I have done literally as a labor of love. And we were approached by a company that sells bananas in Canada. And Juanita and I were like super excited, but also freaked out. And then we did the research, and it turns out it's one of the largest and most like acknowledgeable fair trade banana companies. They are based in Canada, and they work with local farmers, mostly women. And we talked to Banana Link, this nonprofit who researches banana companies, and they said they were the best of the best. So we took a deep breath and we were like, oh, that's fantastic, we can partner with you. And now we can bring more people to participate of this project, and also continue encouraging people to be more responsible when they eat bananas. I think the first step is to eat less bananas, to be honest. And then if you have to, try to buy a banana that fair trade practices.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, which Blanca was saying, is that it's not that we're encouraging people not to eat bananas. They actually, you know, our banana companies are a big
Employer.
Exactly, in Latin American countries. So what we want to do is to have people employed with under the correct circumstances, and if we can do something about it, we are definitely trying to enforce that. And so that's what we're trying to do. And I think your question regarding the images is great, because we think through images we are art historians. So certainly what people are seeing is a very strong project, and I think we work with amazing designers who helped us also visualize this in a way that Blanca and I didn't imagine. So when we first saw the webpage, we were like, wow, we were thinking of something different, but this is amazing. And I think they really were able to convey what we wanted to do with the project through the design of the webpage and the powerful images that we have.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that I feel like people often draw to literature, and of course nonfiction and like essays, but also literature and other forms of culture to reflect on politics and economics. But it's not so often the case that people will look at the visual arts. And I think they have a lot to say, and it's very interesting to reflect on these problems through the lens of the visual arts. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thank you so
Thank you.
much. Yeah, thank you guys. Niskwa, would you like to ask your question?
And after Nicole had her hand up too. So maybe let's
let the student first. Yeah.
I just had a question, just because you were mentioning sort of the fair trade aspect of bananas, and coming off avocados, we were just sort of discussing a lot how that's because the localized violence, that's not even really possible. I'm just wondering, like, does that just sort of, if you can speak more on like is that a thing with bananas, that there is sort of, it's different in that sense, that you are able to get fair trade or are able to sort of have these trade routes that work with farmers in a way that's less sort of detrimental to the people and the environment? Like, is that possible, I guess? I mean, I know you were sort of mentioning that, but it's just wondering if you could speak more on that. I guess maybe also as a viewpoint, from a consumer, sort of looking to find these fair trade routes.
I think there's no perfect world. So at some point we need to balance out, you know, what's the best possible. I mean, I don't think the world is going to stop eating bananas. So we need to find the best way to consume them and distribute them. And I do think that fair trade companies are making an effort to do that. And of course, as I said, it's not like the best, the best possible answer to what we would like to happen. But yeah, it's a really hard question, honestly.
I think one small virtue of the banana market is that to our knowledge, there's no black market for bananas, because it's been going on for so long and bananas have been popular for such a long period of time. It's very much on the public eye and very extensive, and banana plantations are massive and export is huge. So I think that allows for fair trade to be more trustworthy, because it's also been going on for a while and it's like a well-established infrastructure. And for us, what we were looking for was a combination, I guess anyone would look for that, but like a combination of respectful environmental policies for the local land, like no use of pesticides, like upcycling or recycling of water, control over how much land is used for farming or cultivating bananas, because you can like wait and grow them again, right? You don't need to grow such an extension. And then also workers' rights, obviously, like working conditions that are safe and fair, which includes a lot, because it's not just like a fair salary, but it's the equipment you use to work at the plantations. But most families who work at plantations actually live nearby or on the outskirts of a plantation. So that also involves like proper housing and safe ways of housing. There's also a history of sexual violence at plantations, because housing is like, there might be shacks and there's no electricity, and like whatever happens at dark is no one is acknowledged for that. So it also relates to salaries, but also working conditions. And then finally, it has to do with the price of the bananas. Like bananas are too cheap, and that's not sustainable at all. They need to be more expensive. So yeah, I think that's the third component, like they should be sold for more. So that's also something we look for when we look for fair trade companies.
Thank you.
I see there's another student, Julia Kane. Maybe she can go before me.
Well, my question is really quick, but I guess I'm curious how many bananas are farmed by like monoculture that are owned, like the land is owned and the corporation is hiring people to work the bananas, and like how many bananas are sold to those larger corporations by smaller farmers. And I guess if that's a significant number, are those farmers paid like by the weight of bananas, or like how is the price kept so cheap, I guess?
That's a great question. So it has been changing throughout history. Now, the way these really big corporations are working is through, how do you say tercerizar in English? So they are hiring, they're buying directly from local farmers, and then they buy from different ones, and then they ship everything together to the Northern Hemisphere. But it's still not sustainable. So the prices are ridiculous. And that's what I think what Blanca was saying is very right. That's what makes it really difficult for people to live on these very, very small salaries. And if you go to the banana plantations, it's just incredible, the conditions under which people work and how they live in these areas. So there are new generations. I was recently on the Caribbean shore, and a man who lives in one of these small towns was telling us that the new generation is getting trained in tourism. So they are diversifying. And so most of the people who live in these areas work either on the banana plantations, and now the tourist industry is taking over. So it's interesting also to see how things are beginning to change. I don't know if for the better necessarily, but definitely these really big companies have had to rethink their strategies due to this very, very long history.
Yeah. I don't think it's very promising that they're turning to tourism, right? But I guess it's better. But it's another industry that depends on someone from the outside, right? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I'll step in if you guys don't mind. Thank you both, Blanca and Juanita, for putting the work together and for making it available to the world, really, to be able to delve into it. I am particularly interested in your perspective as focusing on the visual. I think something that is disconcerting and insidious about the banana industry in particular is that they operate on manipulating the people's desires and on convincing you that something is happening that is duplicitous, right? So I'm just wondering if there's anything that you're looking at that highlights some of that manipulation of desire, and if you guys are looking at more broadly at like Banana Republic as a, you know, selling product through that idea and the disconnect that, you know, certain consumers have about what that even implies, or the fact that I know in Guatemala before the coup, they hired the nephew of Freud, Edward Bernays, to try to find a way to manipulate folks in Guatemala to make it seem like, you know, any government that was going to try to limit, I guess, the free reign of the banana companies was communist, and just you know, a lot of it was not based in facts. So these misreadings or misrepresentations are at the core of what I think of as the banana industry. And I wondered if you had any ideas about that from the works that you've been looking at.
Well, there's a whole component of the project that reflects on precisely on this, that we hope to develop further at some point. And it's what we call like the visual archive. So not works of art per se, but all of these like memorabilia from the United, the Disney cartoons, all of these like marketing campaigns. It's something that we would really like to research from the lens of, yeah, like visual culture, and hopefully include at some point if we do a physical exhibition. There are tons of materials on eBay still today that are crazy to look at, like how the white ships from the United were like 2 days like cruises, like you could go on vacation on a boat from the United, and included bananas in, and they were portrayed as something very sophisticated and elegant, and all of that strategy and how it has changed through the years is of great interest to us. But we still haven't included in the current version of the project all of these like memorabilia.
Yes, the United Fruit Company were the masters of manipulating through images. So to give you an example, there are no photographs from the Bananas Massacre, besides the one I showed you, which was taken because the workers went to a photo studio to have their pictures taken. But there is a huge photo archive from the company that is today in Harvard's library, and they only show the good part, right? They show how they planted these things, how they brought progress, how blah, 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 blah. And of course, this other side is not documented. So when you go and see the archive, you think, oh yes, this is what was happening. Particularly because they were really smart at using this type of media. So it's very telling, and I always tell my students, and this is something we do a lot in art history, think about what's not there, what is not portrayed, what are they not showing you, why is that important, right? It's not only how and what they show, but also what's lacking there. And certainly that gives you an idea of how these companies work and how they use the media. So another example, they appropriated the image of Carmen Miranda to rebrand themselves as Chiquita Banana. And now if you Google Chiquita, well, you see a banana that has Carmen Miranda's features, like the banana hat, the hat and the dress. But all of these things were certainly part of that. And I think it's a larger discourse of imperialism. So if you look at Disney's movies, for example, there are many that tell the stories of Donald going to Costa Rica and how they portray Latin American people and the nations as banana republics, basically, right? And that's what they're selling the kids. So yeah.
We did a very interesting, or the result was a very interesting exercise in class. Was it you, Olivia, who wrote like a dialogue between two of the people? Yeah, do you have that like anywhere near you? Because it would take us like a minute or two to look at it. And if you, I don't know if Sarah can make you co-host and you can show the image. This is just like a picture that Olivia found on inside an essay about not the workers in the banana plantations, but more, well, the workers in the more administrative level. Now, you were speaking about this kind of hierarchy or almost caste system of the United Fruit Company, and so we were looking at this image of American workers who had lived in Guatemala and were like in a kind of alumni party. Well, I mean, they were all kind of retired, right? And so we did this exercise, which I think, I'm thinking in general that one of the beautiful things about your archive is that it can be used so much as a starting point for imagination, right? For people to have imaginative discussions with what is not there, what's not being represented, as you're saying. Olivia, do you have it? But do you have the picture?
Yeah, I have it. I can pull it up.
You should be able to share your screen, Olivia.
Okay. It's in a piece called Do Bananas Have a Culture? United Fruit Company Colonies in Central America, 1900 to 1960. Let's see. Let me find it first before I share. Okay. Does everyone see this picture? It went away. There we go. Okay, so this is the picture we looked at. It says former United Fruit Company employees and kids dancing at the Kinks wearing Chiquita banana hats. And this was taken in Florida in 2004. So we had to make a dialogue and write a scene between some of the people. It's very silly. I won't tell you who I chose. I will just read it first. So the two characters' names are Ron and Gladys. So Ron says, "Hey Gladys, long time no see. I see that you can still shake it and dance marimba like back in the banana days." And Gladys says, "Oh, hi Ron, how are the kids and the grandkids? Remember when we would let the boys run around with the cute little local kids in the colony?" Ron says, "Oh yes, they would have such a blast while we helped run the banana plantation all day. We didn't have to worry about a thing." And Gladys says, "Those were the days, Ron. How are things at home now that Maria has passed? I can't imagine how lonely things have been." Ron says, "It has been hard, but Maria's family in Guatemala have kept in touch over Facebook, which helps. The boys and I go visit every year so they can spend time with their family and practice their Spanish. I think it is important to learn more about their mother's culture." Gladys says, "That is so good to hear, Ron. We should all get together more. Not a day goes by that I don't think about all of us banana people." Ron says, "Oh, I know. I eat a chiquita every day just to keep the memories in mind." Gladys says, "Those hats are great. I'm going to save them to bring home to the little ones. They're always dying to hear more stories about their grandfather and I during the banana days." And that was the scene.
Thanks for sharing, Olivia.
Of course.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
It's really great. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, guys. Sorry that we ran over time a little bit, but thank you so much for your generosity and this brilliant project. I think it's gonna travel widely, and it's an amazing resource for so many people that are interested in the histories. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us and everyone for attending today. Thank you. It was our pleasure.
So much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.